And if you could just introduce yourself.
I play keyboards in Alice.
My name is Anna Maria, and I am the founder and vocalist in the band Vajra.
What was the initial start?
Yeah, so we all have pretty storied histories.
I was just bored during COVID. Did a little demo, put it out, and it was pretty well received by the community. And
always had a thing for horror punk and stuff.
Something that started with me and a laptop during quarantine, and just like, oh yeah, you know, all those times I said, if only I didn't have to work my job all the time, and now it's like I could have time to do that. Well, now this is that.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. And if you could let the fine people at home know who you are and, you know, what's going on.
My name is Wretched. I'm the lead vocalist of Graverobber.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking your time out to, you know, come on the show. And, you know, I'm really excited for this interview. It's been a while. We've been trying to make this work, so I'm really excited. So tell us a little bit about the history of your band. How did it start? And, you know, how did it get to where it is today?
All we got here is probably just sheer dumb luck and gross misfortune on the part of the listening audience. The beginnings of Graverobber happened back in 2005. In fact, I just recalled earlier, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, that our first show was 18 years ago. Open the one and only Dr. Child here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We began with 5 songs. The band was only a couple weeks old, and we had 5 songs, and we got on stage, and we were absolutely, positively horrible. Not a great way to start out. I don't know that things have gotten much better over the past 18 years, but I will tell you that we have been responsible for very much auditory nerve damage on the part of the listening audience.
Well, what makes you think that why does the audience enjoy it? Why do they keep coming back to the show so much? Because obviously they have.
That's anyone's guess. Well, I think that part of Graverobber's appeal is that it's not just horror, but we implement a little bit of humor and tongue in cheek, and we're not above doing some crazy things on stage that most bands wouldn't do. And just letting the audience determine really what the show is and where it goes and what happens. And recently there was a podcast where someone was talking about a time where we had a can of baked beans sitting on our merch table for no real good reason, just because. And there was a girl in the audience that wanted a t-shirt for free. And I said, well, you've got to earn it, become part of the show, and then, yeah, maybe we'll give you a t-shirt. She said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, I don't know, maybe we'll play our fastest, shortest song that we have. And if you can eat this entire can of baked beans, by the time we play the song, you can have a free t-shirt. So we just brought her into the show. It was all good natured and fun, and
Of course.
she enjoyed doing it. She had baked beans all over her face and all over her t-shirt. And I mean, by that point, we kind of owe her a new t-shirt anyway, because we made her pretty much destroy the one she had on. So it was all in fun. But there's a professional wrestler, and I can't remember his name now, but he talked about it in a recent podcast, because apparently he was there, which is crazy, because there were only about 15 people at this show, and the fact that this guy was there is pretty crazy. And he talked about it and laughed about it and made fun of us for doing it. Doesn't bother me at
Mhm.
all that he did. But he, kind of made fun of us. And I'm like, wait a second. You, a professional wrestler with a shtick, with a show that understands vaudeville, because you can't be a professional wrestler unless you understand the showmanship aspect, the vaudeville nature of what you're doing, for crying out loud, has the audacity to make fun of us for having a girl eat a can of baked beans for a t-shirt. You don't understand that and make fun of us? Well, how can I even be angry at him? Poor little guy. Anyway, yeah, that's what we do. We bring the audience into the show. Why would anybody come to see Grave Robber? Well, our songs are written so that you can sing along even if you don't know the song. We get made fun of sometimes for putting the whoa, whoa, whoa parts in the song, but that's so you can hear it one time and you know your part. You know what to sing. And we
Mhm.
bring the audience into our world. And yeah, that's really the secret. It has nothing to do with being this gorgeous. It has nothing to do with anything other than caring enough about our audience. And they know that. They know that we care about them and we draw them into our world and make them part of the show.
Mm, for sure, for sure. That's really interesting. Like I really appreciate bands that like go that extra mile and engage with the audience and bring everything in. And talking about your music being simple, whether it's simply constructed or not, I personally, as a listener, I found that I really enjoy the music and I enjoy those woes and everything. If I can hear a song and if I can get it stuck in my head and if I can remember those hooks and everything, that's what I want. I want that in a band. I'm there to have fun. I'm not there to analyze how technical the guitar solo is, although that can be fun too. But like, I just really genuinely appreciate it. So yeah, I agree with you on that. If he doesn't get it, then that's on him because I think that's awesome. Like anything to bring the audience into the show. That's why they're there. They're there to be with you to be entertained. So I think that's cool.
We know full well we're not for everybody. And so, I grew up as a fan of Kiss, and all I heard my whole life, and I'm still hearing it, is how much Kiss sucks. Oh, don't listen to it if you don't like it. You know, I grew up as a Ramones fan, and people still say the Ramones suck. Well, don't listen to it. There are people that say Grave Robber sucks. Well, don't listen to it. We don't make
Hmm.
music to try to win somebody over. We
Hmm.
make music that we like, and hopefully someone else does. And apparently, there are people out there. There's 5 or 6 people that actually like Grave Robber, so we're good. As long as the people that want to hear simple, loud, fast punk rock songs and want to sing along and just want to have a good time with the band, that those are the people we care about. People that want to sit home and dissect the music and listen to Dream Theater. Hey, if you love Dream Theater, listen to Dream Theater. Me, I like the Sex Pistols. I like the Ramones. I like Iggy Pop. I like
Hmm.
Sweet, Slade, Mott the Hoople. I like David Bowie. I like Motorhead. And those are my influences. Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Kiss. Those are all my influences. So that naturally comes out in the music. And I've heard for my whole life how every one of those bands I just named sucks. They don't suck. They're just not your music. And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
beauty of music, is it's ear of the beholder. You
Mm,
know,
mhm.
I like simple music. As you said, I like things that are simple. I like songs that are catchy. I like songs that make me care about hearing it again.
Mhm.
There's some bands that are simple that just aren't catchy, and it doesn't stick in my head. We played
Mhm.
with bands where they play a song and as soon as they end the song, I don't remember the song they just played because it doesn't stick in my head at all. So my goal is to write a song that is an earworm that just tunnels in, digs into your brain, and stays there.
Well, and so let's talk about that. Like, how does that process start when you're writing music for the project? Like, does it start with lyrics or instrumentation, or how does that work for you all?
For me personally, it starts with a melody line, something hooky, something I can sing along to, something that makes me want to sing the song starts there. Then a concept of what the song's going to be about, then lyrics. Then I sit down with the guitar and kind of figure out what chords support the melody line. A lot of bands have a guitar line and then they write the lyrics and the melody to the guitar line. I do it the opposite way. That's why maybe my guitar lines aren't all that interesting to guitar players. That's fine. Well, the good news is on stage I don't have to play the guitar lines. That's Viral's job. He plays them. I write them, he plays them. But sometimes he comes up with something interesting on the guitar and that matches the vocals, and that's good too. But really, at the end of the day, it's about the song being memorable and upbeat and the song that you want to hear again, something catchy. That's the important thing for me. That's when I heard the Ramones. That's what I loved about them. When I heard the Sex Pistols, that's what I loved about them. When I even Kiss, yeah, okay, they've got some guitar riffs, but for me, it was the vocals. It was what's going on there. Can I sing along to it? And that's always been my favorite stuff from being a very, very young reanimated corpse. I would sit in the back of my parents' car and the AM radio would be on playing the songs of the day, and the ones that I cared about were the ones that stuck with me. And that's never changed.
So you first and foremost would say that you really put your influences out there, and that you're like, when it comes to like your
Sure.
writing and stuff, that like you write how you write and you write the music that you like, and it's definitely informed then by the all those great bands that you were mentioning. I love so many
Yes.
of those bands that you mentioned, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny it. It's obvious. In so many cases, you can hear the Misfits plain as day in what we do. I make no bones about it. You know, Somebody says you're just a Misfits ripoff, and I say thank you. I've worked hard at that. I've worked hard to become a Misfits ripoff, and I don't have any problem with that at all. That's not an insult to me.
Oh yeah, no, those guys are great. I love the Misfits. I'm sure anyone that's interested in horror punk is, obviously they have to have at least heard them at some point. But what I really
Can you
like though,
imagine? Can you imagine being a metal band and somebody says, "Man, you really sound like Black Sabbath"? That would be a
yeah,
huge compliment. Man, you really
absolutely.
sound like Iron Maiden. That's a huge compliment. So the same thing applies here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, obviously, they were the band that kind of lifted the whole, scene, the idea of the scene into prominence of there being horror punk in general. And like you were saying, wearing that proudly, like, yeah, I'm like, if you're saying I'm the Misfits ripoff, that's a huge compliment. I think that's awesome.
Sure.
I think I think that the scene has a huge diversity of sound, including you guys, I don't like I do feel that like you obviously like pulling elements of horror punk into the style of your music, but I hear so much of the other stuff you mentioned as well. So much of the like 70s and 80s and all of that in it. So for me it's like, yeah, you may start with that bass, but what makes you different, what makes you unique is combining all those influences together. And I don't know. I just really appreciate it because the genre of horror punk, I like to think of it as a literary genre. There are trappings and things like the whoa-wows, right? But I like to think of it more as like what we ascribe to the lyrics and the tone. That's how I see horror punk personally, because I know so many bands. There are ska bands, there are metal bands, everything that are donning this like horror punk thing now, and they're bringing yes, the Misfits element into it, but they're bringing so many other things. And I just think it's so cool to see where all these different influences come and really breathe life into this whole scene. I unfortunately breathed life into Undeath, I guess, but
But that's over the course of 18 years. And we started out, there weren't that many horror punk bands. There were a few. Of course, there was the Independents and Blitzkid and Calabrese and there were bands, of course, and of course the Misfits and bigger bands than us. And we were always kind of the redheaded stepchild of horror punk. We still are, and I'm okay with it. You know, we didn't tour as hard as those bands. Those other bands that rose up certainly earned what they got. They certainly earned that. And I think we've earned exactly the amount that we put in. So I don't have any qualms or heartbreak over it at all. I mean,
oh
I would
yeah.
have loved to have toured more. I would have loved to have, you know, done what those bands did. We've never been to Europe. That's something we still want to do. We can figure out how to get there. We have fans in Brazil. I'd love to get to Brazil. It's just a matter of well, it's a matter of money, of course, but it's also a matter of finding the right promoters and people to take care of you. But one of the things that's been interesting is the younger bands don't want to be a ripoff of the Misfits, and I think that's great. I do want to be a ripoff of the Misfits, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's but I don't. It doesn't bother me that younger bands are shunning that because the scene is evolving and the music is evolving,
Oh
and
yeah, for
that's
sure.
yeah, of course. I mean, and those are all good things. And now you've got bands like Evelyn's Casket who would prefer to sound like Blitzkid over sounding like the Misfits. And I think that's great. I think there's room for all of it, and the Independents, of course, with their ska influence and it brought that into horror punk. And I think it's all fantastic. There's room for all of it. And what there isn't room for is being elitist and
Yeah.
divisionary. I don't accept that at all. And I'm fans with a lot of different bands with a lot of different sounds, and we just played with a band called Pretty with the Lights Out this past weekend, and they sounded more metal, like metal and like I guess a little bit of Wednesday 13 with kind of a metal sound to it, which Wednesday has as well. So, and we got along with them famously, so no problems there. One of my current favorite bands right now is a band from Chicago called Won't Stay Dead, with two girls that harmonize better than anybody in the scene right now. Just amazing harmonies, and their songs are really super poppy and sugary. Well, some of them are quite dark, but they're
Yeah.
amazing. And they certainly don't sound like the Misfits either.
Yeah, yeah. No, and like you're saying, that's the whole thing, right? Like I think it was Nicky Casket from 5 Cent Freak Show, and he's now in Evelyn's Casket as well. I think he said that we may be freaks, but we're not alone. And I love that.
Yeah,
The whole idea of forget the elitism, like
right.
everyone welcome, come on in.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point is to create a place for miscreants and misfits, not the band misfits, but people who don't fit in, square pegs. And I've been a square peg my whole life. I've broken convention my whole life. I didn't even realize that I was doing it. I just am who I am. I believe what I believe. I stand for what I stand for. And I don't make any qualms or bones about it. No pun intended. Well, okay, maybe pun intended. But I don't, I don't, but I'm not mean. I just don't buckle to societal norms because it's just not the way that I'm designed, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
And Nicky he's a good friend. I love him dearly. He's a great guy and a good friend, and he hit it right on the nail with that.
So what do you see as the trajectory of how the scene is heading currently? How do you see the bands going now?
To be honest with you, I mean, there's been a lot of bands, older bands were the bands that we were friends with and rubbed shoulders with, and in recent years, we we haven't played that many shows with other horror bands, but there's so many more of them now than there were when we started. So the trajectory where I see it going is just more. You have bands like over in Europe, like the Other, who they're not just considered a niche band. They're considered a legitimate band. And
Hmm.
the problem with horror punk is it's always been considered a very uh, I guess I said redheaded stepchild earlier. It's like the redheaded stepchild of music and not taken seriously. And I think there's a lot of bands, and I hate to say this, but a lot of bands that don't spend enough time on their recordings or on their craft or on their visuals or on their songs. And so that it does have this cheesy aspect to it. I mean, we certainly have a certain flavor of cheese in our own band, but I think when the bands start taking more time with their recordings, more time with their songs, that's when it will propel and become something that has a little more respect behind it.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Wednesday's on tour right now and doing incredible on this tour. I've seen some footage from the tour so far, and his last tour that we played twice with him on the last tour, and the crowds weren't really all that big, and then all of a sudden, a year and a half later, here he is playing for much bigger crowds
Yeah, yeah.
because his show is you know it's legit.
Hmm.
He takes a lot of time and a lot of pride and a lot of effort in what he does, and that's with Grave Robber, our biggest problem is we've had to start over time and time again with band members coming and going. If we could keep one solid lineup together where we didn't have to start over all the time, we'd be much further ahead. But
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem in the genre altogether is just bands that schlock it together and slop it together, and they're not tight, and the singers aren't good, and the recordings aren't good, and the songs just aren't well done. And
Hmm.
I'm not trying to sound like I'm not trying to sound like our music is so much better than everyone else's. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if everyone in the scene put the same care as somebody like Wednesday 13 or Blitzkid or any number of bands that have kind of risen to the top, if everyone did that, the scene would have more legitimacy. But I see it going that way. There are some
Hmm.
younger bands like, for instance, Evelyn's Casket or 5 Cent Freak Show that obviously put great care and great time and great passion into what they do and
Hmm.
deserve everything that they've gotten so far and so much more in the future because they care about it. But the other thing about horror punk, as we kind of touched on before, is I can't think of a genre of music that cares more about their fans
Yeah,
than the
yeah.
horror punk bands because you know I don't think there's a huge division between the bands and the audience.
Oh no,
I can tell
absolutely.
you that Grave Robber is always the last to leave. One thing I cannot stand is a band that gets on the bill, plays their set, and then they leave. I
Yeah.
choose as much as possible to never play another show with bands like that. We don't. We're tearing down when the audience is really gone. Then we tear down because we care enough about our audience to be there for every single member, sign every CD, every vinyl, just to be there to talk, to hang out with them because we care about our audience. And I know that sounds like, you know, a canned thing to say, just like, you know, everybody says that.
Hmm.
But if they say it and then they leave and don't spend time with you, I
Yeah,
can't, I can't, I can't respect them or believe them.
yeah.
The people that I want to be friends with are people that, like us, care about their audience and will stay there and be there for their audience and for the other bands, for each other. This is about
Oh yeah.
building a scene, and it's not just building a local scene; it's building a national scene. I just can't fathom the idea of taking the time to load your equipment after rehearsing, after changing strings and changing drum heads and doing your recordings and promoting the show and go to the show, play your set, and then leave.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
What kind of crazy nonsense is that? I'm sorry, I just don't have respect for bands that do that.
No,
I have
absolutely.
respect for bands that care about their fellow musicians and care about the audience. That's what's important to me.
One of the things that I really appreciated, no matter how big or small the band was staying to the end of the show, like you're saying. We would often play like house parties and things like that because I was in like high school bands and things like that, and it never occurred to us to leave because I mean we were there to be at the party with our friends, right? And even if you're paying to go to a show or whatever, you're paying for that experience. And as a band, I always thought about that when we played at a venue or whatever. People are coming there, they're coming there to be with you, they're coming there to see what you're doing. And you, like you were talking about earlier, getting the whole vaudeville angle, like we are entertainers, that's what we do. No matter what kind of entertainment we do, no matter what it is, first and foremost our job is to create art, but aside from create art is to use that art to entertain people and bring them closer and let them feel like they're a part of a community. Music is a communal art form, and that's where that's what kind of drew me into it in the first place. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate, your stance on that. And I honestly completely agree. I think it is really cool when bands take the time to do that and spend time with their fans. Um, so, talking about that, uh, when did that really develop for like you as an artist? When did that like really, I mean, without, naming anything, but why did that become so important to you?
As you said, it never made sense to me to say, yes, I will be involved in this particular thing this evening. I will load up my van. I will drive to the venue. I'll unload my equipment. I'll promote the show for weeks and weeks on end. I'll be involved with you as a promoter and you as a venue and you as other bands and artists that I'm supposed to respect. Because why would you play a show with bands you didn't respect? And even if you don't know them, let's start from a place of respect rather than start from a place of animosity.
Hmm.
It never made sense to me to disrespect other artists and the venue and the promoter by leaving. And I've heard people say, well, if you're on tour and you got to get to the next town, it's like, give me a break.
Yeah.
I mean, if the show's over at 2 a.m., I mean, you're telling me your next show is in 4 hours?
Yeah.
Come on. You've got time to get to the next town. Give me a break. I mean, I understand that every once in a while there are circumstances where you don't have an option, or maybe a local band, that somebody works third trick and has to get to their job or whatever. I get that. I don't have a problem with that. I'd have a problem with those bands that bring their friends and make their friends part of the show, and then, well, we played our set, we went on first, and we're going to leave. After parties at Jim's house. Come on, everybody out, let's go. And you take the people out of the show. That hurts the venue, it hurts the promoter, it hurts the other bands. It's bad for. And where it started becoming an issue for me was just seeing it happen more and more. And with younger bands, older bands, I never saw that happening. Younger bands were just, well, I got my set time and that's it. I don't even like telling people what time Graverobber's going on. Like, what
Hmm.
time's Graverobber going on? Sometime between 8 and midnight. Come and find out. You know,
Hmm.
I to tell people exactly. Now, if somebody says, I'm going to come to the show if I know that if I can make it to see you. Well, okay, then I'll tell you. I'll tell you roughly what time we're on, so that you at least show up. But if you just want to know because you're gonna miss everybody else and disrespect everyone involved, then I'm just not that interested in that.
Hmm.
And I'm not interested in continuing to play with bands that don't care about building a scene and building a community. I'm just not interested in it. I mean, it's
Hmm.
been 18 years. I'm not famous. I'm not rich. You know, I have no reason at all to, you know, act like a rock star and be elusive and not be with the people that are there to meet us. This past weekend we played at the Melody Inn in Indianapolis, which is a very well-known punk rock club. It's been going on for 25 years, and there are old school punk rockers that go to their day jobs and come home and throw on their leather jacket and go out to the Melody Inn, and that's what it is. And I heard so many people come up to us afterward and say, we really like you guys because you guys hang out. You don't go back in the dressing room. We have a rule. You're not allowed as a member of Graverobber to hide out in the dressing room. Okay, you want to take a couple minutes, take a couple minutes. You got a headache, you don't feel good, you got a stomach ache, you got diarrhea. Yeah, go back there. And if you've been the one driving for 8 hours, okay, you want to take a nap, go take a nap. But if you are feeling okay and if you're good, you really should be out where the people are, because otherwise, don't tour, don't play live, just stay home and stay out of my way.
For sure, for sure. I really respect that. I think that's awesome. And I completely understand where those fans are coming from. It's music, like we were talking about earlier, it's a communal experience. And just taking the time to really be there for your fans, to stay there, to, like you're saying, sign the records, support the other bands, whatever it is. I think that's really cool. I did want to touch on something you brought up earlier, which was the recording quality in the music. That's something that in the scene overall, I really I feel the same way. I think there are a lot of really talented bands, and I have a belief that there is punk rock is not an excuse to suck. That that is my philosophy.
I can't believe you just said that. That has literally been my mantra for 3 decades, where literally word for word, I say punk rock is not an excuse to suck. In fact, if you're a punk band, you better have your tones together, you better be tight, and you better know how to play your instrument at least
Yeah,
well enough to pull off a punk, and the band better be tight together, because that's what we've got. We've got tightness and we've got, you know, tone, good tones and being tight.
hmm
Don't, if your guitar sounds like crap, work on it. If
yeah,
you if your band can't stop together, work on it. Get it tight, get it sounding good. Have some respect for the genre that you're playing.
yeah.
Don't
No,
disrespect the
absolutely.
genre by being a sloppy mess.
No, absolutely. I like obviously I completely agree. I extend that not just in the live, but also in the recording. Like I
Yes.
see that it's one thing if you're a band and you're starting out and all you've got is like a field recording device and you can set it in the room and go. If that's the best you can do and that's where you're at, that's perfect. It's about effort, right? Like for me, if you only have the $300 budget to go in the studio and you know a guy who's going to hook you up and you can get it, then in the time that you're allowed in that studio, or if you've got a home studio or whatever, if you're putting in 1,000% and you're making it as best as you can quality wise, perfect. Even if it's not like, I know like radio quality might not be like the standard that people try for in punk rock, but what I'm saying is that like whatever the standard is that you can do, whatever the best is that you can do, if you're not trying for it, then for me, I feel like you're not taking your art seriously, so why should I? And that's something that I think I like about your project is I do feel that you take it seriously. Three chord punk songs are simple, but like, and I'm not saying that's how you would describe your music necessarily, but I'm saying in general the idea of the three chord punk song, right, being the simple, fast, short, whatever. If you are taking the time to write good songs, if you are taking the time to record it well, if you are taking the time to practice it and perform it and be tight like that, that's what I care about as a fan and as a musician. I'm not saying I've always been the best at that, or that all bands that I like have, but like putting that effort in is what I care about more than anything. I do like my guitar solos and I do like, technical playing, but when I'm listening to straight ahead punk rock, whether it's, whatever style, whether it's Misfits, Ramones, whether it's something completely new and original, those are the things I really care about is the band, whether they're independent, signed to a label, are they putting everything they can in, or are they, using it as an excuse to suck at what they're doing? And that, there are bands that do that. They're like, oh, it's punk rock, it's fine, it's whatever. It's like, no, your fans are paying money to see you. They're paying money for a show. They want to see you, they want to hear you. If they're willing to do that, treat them with respect. And I feel like you guys do that,
No
but I
such
wanted to
thing
let
as
you speak
good
on that.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no such thing as good enough for punk rock.
Mhm.
That's idiocy. That just
Yeah.
says you don't respect yourself or respect the genre. And I'm no, I'm with you on that. I disagree. I mean, there's no reason why punk bands can't just sound good and have their tones together and play with proficiency. There's no reason why not,
Yeah.
especially with the technology now. And you mentioned a band that only has $300. Look, if you got four guys in the band, scrape together $300 because you can get a song done for $300. And if you notice, the biggest bands in the world are doing singles now. You don't have to do 15 to 20 songs to have a full length. If you've only got $300, start with that one song. Record a really good song or record four good songs. You use the type of pressing where you can, print to order type companies, start there, but start with it sounding good. Start with showing that you put forth some creative pride into your product. Because if you don't believe in it, you can't expect me to believe in it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so we always said that we have to be right out of the chute. We have to be at the top of our game. We have to. And, again, we never got as big as Calabrese or as big as Blitzkid, or any of those kind of bands like that. And even right now, we're not one of the bigger bands. I get that. I mean, but even after 18 years, we're still, you know, we're still just low budget touring turds. We still care enough about our product, our music, our the things that we put together to try to offer something of value. And I think it comes down to that.
For sure, for sure. Well, speaking of, being on tour and stuff, I'm curious. I know you mentioned that you've done a show recently with Pretty with the Lights Out. Are there any bands in the scene either that you've played with recently or over the course of your career? Maybe that you're thinking back on that you feel either deserved or deserve more attention that you'd like to like spotlight and put a little light on and say, hey, I'm a fan of this music too. Why don't you go check them out?
Currently, one of our best friends it is a band called Slaughter Party. They're from Wisconsin. Definitely check out Slaughter Party. They're great people, very fun. They get a little crass and off color, but it's all tongue in cheek and fun, and they're great. Another, I guess, probably one of the closest bands to us personally is a band from Chicago called Lipper, which is a goth band. Not so much horror punk, but goth. They're incredible. I mentioned earlier, let's see, I mentioned Won't Stay Dead. They're just absolutely incredible. Of course, Nikki and the boys from 5 Cent Freak Show, are definitely good friends. And it started out, believe it or not, it started out with them being fans of Graverobber, and which I think happens a lot in horror punk, where you start out as a fan of a band and you end up being friends with them. Of course, Evelyn's Casket is one of the bands that's up and coming and rising, and they're just absolutely fantastic live. If you get a chance to see them, go see them. It's always hard for me to, in my you know rotting reanimated zombie brain to remember so many bands that we played with over the years. I remember, geez, I'm trying to remember the name of the band right now. a band from California that Order of the Fly. Played with them like years and years ago, and they were absolutely incredible, and they're still around. And we used to play with Calabrese all the time. We used to play with Blitz Kid. Trying to think who else. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank right now, but it's really easy if you pick up any of those compilations, those We Are Horror Punk compilations, and just that's how you can be introduced to a lot of new bands just by picking those out. And I think that's super important. And horror punk has always been good about those kind of compilations. We just did one that was a tribute to early Metallica. We covered
Yeah.
Escape off of Ride the Lightning. That was a lot of fun. And we're recording this weekend. Well, by the time this airs, it'll all probably already be out. But we are recording Earth AD for a Misfits tribute, and we're doing that this weekend, and looking forward to that coming out. So hopefully, in 2024, we'll have a new full length and maybe an EP. You know, of course, we said that for 2022 and 2023, and it didn't happen. But you know, I think we're a little more serious about it this time. It's been a while. It's been a while since we had some new music out, so we're long overdue.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'll be really excited about that. I just want to say, you know, we're coming to a close here, and I just wanted to say thank you again so much for your time. Thank you so much for being willing to come on here and, you know, share this conversation with me and you know, share a little bit about the history of the project and how you guys write and everything. These kind of conversations, you know, I'm just a guy starting this whole thing out, and it's really cool that this scene is so open and so willing to like allow someone the chance to come up there and do their own little part to help promote. You know, that I treat this show like my home, and I invite people into it, and the way they act and the way they treat me is the way I will go on thinking about them afterwards. And I just really appreciate it. Sorry.
Can't believe that I forgot this, but I should mention that being from Fort Wayne, Indiana, we probably have more horror punk bands per capita than any other city because in our town we have us, the Lurking Corpses, the B-movie Monsters,
Yeah.
Creep, the Devil Dolls. Seems like I'm forgetting somebody, but I mean, there's at least 6 horror punk bands right in our town. I mean, I know, you know, we don't usually hear people talk about Fort Wayne, Indiana as the horror punk capital of the world, but maybe we are. There's a lot of horror punk here.
Hmm. For sure, for sure. Well, are there any shows or any releases or anything on social media you want to promote while I've got you here?
Well, sadly, at the time of this interview, we are 2 shows away from our drummer leaving. So we're going to be looking for a new drummer. So that being the case, there's nothing scheduled at the present. I'll probably, I mean, there's probably going to be quite a few events where I'm sitting in my living room in my underwear watching horror movies, but I don't think anybody wants to come to that.
Fair enough, fair enough. So where, if someone wants to listen to your music, where do you want them to go? Do you want them to go to Bandcamp or Spotify or YouTube? Where's the best place that you would like them to listen to your music?
The best place is at a live show, but if they can't make it to a live show, you know, I would say, you know, even though Spotify pays about 0.00000000000001% of a penny every time you listen to it, it's probably the best and easiest place to catch the music. And usually when we plan shows or plan a road trip, we usually make a playlist of what we're going to play live. So if anybody wants to check it out, you just jump on there and find it. And if you want to refresh or even learn the songs for the first time, you can jump on there and listen to it on your way to the show and take part in the show. I mean, that's literally our whole thing is I sing some of the parts of the songs, but the audience sings the rest of it. I hold the microphone out, and it's up to you to sing the rest.
For sure, for sure. Well, I hopefully someday I'll have the opportunity to come see you guys play live. I haven't, sadly, yet, audience. I found them because of a compilation album, but I have heard a lot of good things. If you get an opportunity, go see them live. And if you can't see them live, go find those playlists. Thank you again so much for being on here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much for staying to the end of the episode. I really appreciate it. My name is William Hamilton, and I've been the host of this episode of Heartfelt Horror here on the Heartfelt Horror Media Network channel. We really do appreciate you guys staying to the end of these videos. While you're here, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment down below, these little things really do go a long way to helping us, get our name out there and get our show out into the algorithm so other people like you can find us. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're looking for other ways to support the show, we have a Patreon. The link for that is going to be down here. You can copy that into the search bar and you'll find our page. Our Patreon is for $5 a month. For $5 a month, you're going to be able to help us buy all sorts of new equipment. You're going to help us be able to save up for different kind of developmental processes that we're going to be using to bring you new and different kinds of content besides these interviews. So if that sounds like something that interests you, please consider it. Again, it'll be $5 and the link to the Patreon is going to be down there below. So thank you so much for your time and have a nice day. Bye.
These walls are closing in.